All right, high rollers, we've got one of my favorites on the line today. He is a statistical analyst for the Professional Darts Corporation, plays darts, writes about it too. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you must. One of the greatest handles on Twitter, at Akapedia. One of the best darts number guys out there, a wealth of knowledge. His Twitter bio also says that he draws and makes maps. And if you do that, folks, you are detail-oriented. This guy is Chris Kempf. Welcome back, man. Thanks for being our high roller today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
This is your time of year, right? It's almost like Christmas, just days away from the World Championships.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely the busiest time of the year. Everybody's asking me for different stats. Everybody's planning to get their wagers ready for the Worlds, and it's a great time. I'm really enjoying it.
So people come to you for betting advice, do they?
Well, they come to me for statistical advice. I try not to provide anything that might be construed as betting advice, but any statistic that I'm tweeting or that I write about is obviously seized on by any number of people who are looking to make a little profit out of the matches.
We're going to talk about some of those stats that you put out there. All of them great stuff. It really goes in depth and gives you a good idea of who's leading the pack. Can you say MVG? But first, man, let's talk about your poem, The Ballad of Alexandra Palace, and thank you for letting High Roller Radio use it. We made a video. I really enjoyed that, man. Poetry, I didn't know.
Well, I had done a little bit of it in high school and college, and honestly, it was just sort of a silly little thing, having read some older poetry that might convey a historical event with kind of a mythological significance. And as far as my history with darts is concerned, the first darts video I ever watched online was, of course, the 17 Perfect Darts of MVG. And that was what got me excited about darts. That's what got me playing darts. So I just decided to memorialize it in a way that would make it more like a sort of a mythic or mythological event.
Well, it certainly is a mythological event. I mean, if you're talking to someone right now that's not into darts, pretend you are, how would you describe how difficult it is to do what MVG did that night? 17 perfect darts in a row. I mean, it truly was astonishing.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would characterize it is, you're going to stand about 8 feet away from the wall. You've got a set of darts in your hand. And on the wall, 8 feet away from you, there's a postage stamp about 6 feet above the floor. And now you're going to hit that 17 times in a row. How many times do you think you're really going to be able to do that?
Well, for most people worldwide, that entire wall is littered with dart holes.
Including mine.
Yeah. It is amazing. The guy just continues to impress day in, day out. Now, he loses once in a while. We're going to talk about MVG more detail later, but the guy is the best, and he continues to strut his stuff. I know that you believe the World Championship is darts' only true major. Can you explain why?
Well, I suppose my quarrel with that term major really has more to do with how it's used in the context of darts more than with the other tournaments. Because as far as I'm concerned, the World Grand Prix is my favorite tournament. I love it. I love the double start, but I don't consider it a major. When you consider how the word major is used in tennis or golf, say, we're talking about 4 different tournaments that have approximately equal stature, approximately equal ranking impact, and basically the same amount of prize money that's going to the winner. Now, that's absolutely not the case in darts. When we're talking about the World Championship, the winner's share of the prize money is £500,000, and there's nothing else on the darts calendar that even comes close to that. World Match Play, you'd have to win it 4 times to get past the level of just being the world champion once. So obviously, when we're talking about winning majors in golf or tennis, we're talking about a set of 4 events that everyone agrees upon. And there's absolutely no agreement as far as what constitutes a major in darts, even if we're talking about the UK Open or the Players' Championship finals. But when you look at how the rankings change after any given tournament, there is just no comparison between the World Championship and everything else. The World Championship is really the only game in town. The others are important, but not in comparison to the World Championship.
I mean, it can make or break a career, a year. It's heavily weighted to the prize money and the rankings, as you mentioned. Now, that's a unique thing to darts. Is that a good thing?
Well, what it does is help encourage players to be their best on TV. And that is, I think, what the PDC is really wants to encourage. Because if you look at a player like Ian White, a huge percentage of his prize money comes from winning Pro Tour events and a couple of Euro Tour events. But it was only just 2 weeks ago that Ian White reached his first semifinal on the TV. And as a consequence of that, I don't believe Ian White has ever been higher than 9th on the order of merit, and he's never been invited to a World Series event, except for the World Series finals. So basically the PDC is organizing professional darts events, but it's also organizing entertainment for fans. And it has an interest to ensure that the entertainment, when people tune in on TV, is as good as it can be.
I know you like to dabble in the philosophy and the psychology of the game. You mentioned a guy right there. A lot of talk these days about the diamond, Ian White, and the fact that he doesn't quite live up to the hype when he gets on stage. What do you think the reasons for that is? Is it bottle? Is it something else? I mean, I know nerves plays a large part of darts, but I'm wondering why a guy like that, who's obviously so good, just doesn't always bring it when he's up there.
In Ian White's case, I think he's actually getting a bit closer, because it must have been a major coup for him to have beaten Michael van Gerwen in front of a Dutch audience on the European Tour, as well as snap the longest and most remarkable streak of winning last leg deciders that has ever been recorded in darts. Obviously, he fell short at the Players' Championship finals after reaching the semifinal, but I think Ian White is getting a lot closer. And over all of those years of losses in TV quarterfinals, I think there can be kind of a feedback effect. If you lose a particular quarterfinal, especially if it's close, you're more inclined, I think, to think that the pressure is on you to get to that next stage more than to just get up there and play the game like it's any other. And when you go through 60 consecutive tournament appearances on TV without a semifinal, I imagine it's all Ian White ever hears about. And you have to have a bit of sympathy for the guy because, give it up for him. He's got 300,000 pounds of ranking money, and he hasn't even been to a TV quarterfinal in those years. I mean, he's making a fantastic living for himself playing excellent darts, just not on TV. But that's a tremendous way to make a living, and I'm pretty envious of him for that.
Absolutely, and you think about a guy like Michael Smith as well. When they talk about the World Championship, you figure once he gets through that door, he'll just smash it down.
Yeah, and luckily for Michael Smith, he has even more time than Ian White does. I believe he's right around 30 years old. So he's closer to the beginning of his professional career, I would imagine, than he is to its end.
Now, with respect to the World Championship being dart's only true major, you put this out there, quote, "You don't consider any of Daryl Gurney's titles to be majors. Of course, Super Chins won the World Grand Prix and the Players' Championship." You took some heat for that, not only from Gurney's management team, MDA Promotions, which replied by saying, "No chance. The World Grand Prix is 100% a major rich in PDC history." They did admit, though, the Players' Championship, there's an argument there. And then a fan chimed in saying, if the Players' Championship isn't a major, why do you have to play so many events to make it there? A nice little spat there on Twitter. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I always enjoy having an argument or a conversation on Twitter, especially if we can sort of air out disagreements and try to get at the source of why we're having an argument. So it's always enjoyable, and it's all in good spirit. I mean, I have nothing against the people who attack me for those statements, and I'm glad they do. It makes for a much more interesting social media experience. As far as those arguments are concerned, I think we're just arguing the question from different directions. My focus on the question of what is and what is not a major focuses on the actual impact that those events have for players as they are moving through their career. And the most important impact that would have is the amount of money that gets added to their ranking total. And when you look at it from that direction, it's pretty obvious that you would want to win the World Championship 4 times more than you would want to win any other event. Now, of course, it's perfectly legitimate to say that the World Grand Prix, the World Match Play, maybe even the Grand Slam have a lot of great history. They're fantastic events. I agree with them on that. But I'm not arguing this on the point of prestige or the caliber of the event. I'm just looking at the impact that it has on the rankings, and the rankings determine what you qualify for in the future and how much future income you will have. And I think that's the most important thing to a darts player.
Bottom line is, if you're going to have a purple patch, you want it at Christmas. Okay, I love running down your Twitter, especially this time of year. A lot of great info that relates to the World Championship. But before we do that, you just sent me a comprehensive list of key missed match darts in World Championship history. I haven't had time to digest it all yet, but I do find it fascinating how darts history may have been rewritten if a few of those went in, right? I mean, it's a game of millimeters, sometimes less than that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you look at some of the more memorable ones. I mean, you can think of 2012 semifinal. James Wade takes a 5-1 lead in sets after about an hour's worth of arguing over the air conditioner in the Alexandra Palace. He takes a 5-1 lead, and then he gets up to 5-2 in sets, and I believe it was 2-2 in legs, and he gets a match dart to complete a 108 finish on double 18, and it just misses the mark. And that's the closest that James Wade has come before or since to a World Championship final. After he missed that match dart in that match, he missed all 10 of his double attempts from that point until the point where Adrian Lewis came back and won the semifinal. And you have to think about what are James Wade's prospects of reaching a World Championship final nowadays, now that we are truly into the era of MVG. And you look at James Wade's previous tournament appearances, and he's reached a number of quarterfinals, certainly, but he hasn't had any real success against the real elite players. He hasn't beaten Phil Taylor at the World Championships. He hasn't beaten Michael Verhoeven at the World Championships. And he hasn't beaten Gary Anderson at the World Championships. If he wants to get to a World Championship final, he has a very consistent and meticulous game, which is very well suited to him coming through, say, his quarter of the draw. But I'm of a mind that 2012 was his real opportunity to win a World Championship. And if he's going to get to a position, again, say this year, in which he is going to get another match dart to reach a World Championship final, it's going to be twice as hard for him to get there. So you can imagine what might have happened to James Wade if he reached that World Championship final, or became the World Championship. That would have been 2013, sorry. You can imagine what might have happened to James Wade's career, because at the moment he's recognized as, the most consistent and effective dart player on tour, but just one who has never had the success that he might have deserved for having been so consistent for so long.
It's really something, because that's what James Wade's known for, right? Pinching the leg at the end. And if one of those doubles goes in, I mean, the what-ifs in sport is really something else.
Yeah, and you can also think of that quarterfinal in 2013 in which Adrian Lewis missed 2 match darts to defeat Michael Verhoeven, who went on to reach the World Championship final. Now imagine if Adrian Lewis had hit those match darts, he would have been in a semifinal playing for a possible chance of winning 3 consecutive World Championship titles. Now, even MVG has never won 2 in a row. And for Adrian Lewis to have been thinking about 3 in a row, that would have been remarkable. But much to the chagrin of Adrian Lewis, he just hasn't come as close as that ever since.
Real quick on Adrian Lewis, just a sentence or two. What do you make of his game and what's happened to him over the years?
Adrian, I think, was let's put it this way. Adrian is still a world-class player, and he is very much accustomed to winning and beating top players on the tour. But the problem with Adrian Lewis is just that he suffered an enormous drop in his order of merit at the 2018 World Championship, where he fell from the top 10 out of the top 16 after losing in his first match to the German Kevin Munk. And it's been hard for him to sort of recover from that, because he went from being, a top-line Premier League, Champions League player to having to struggle to qualify for some of these big TV events. And for someone like Adrian Lewis, who's been the world number 2, who was at one point in time the marquee matchup in darts with Phil Taylor whenever they met up, it's quite a step down from him to be playing the way he is now. And it's no discredit to Adrian Lewis, because playing on the PDC Pro Tour is harder than it's ever been. It's just difficult to get adjusted to being one out of a pack of many than when you had once been sort of the heir apparent in the world of darts.
Keeps getting tougher and tougher, too. There's no easy games. I find it a fascinating list, man. Good job on that. How history might have changed. I think back to the BDO final, Durant-McGeaney, the gladiator mismatched darts. I often wonder when I watch him play what he must think to himself in those solitary moments, You got to have flashbacks, and they got to kill you.
Yeah, as we were talking about James Wade, that might have been his one chance to win a world championship. It's going to be much, much harder for him in the PDC from now on.
Speaking of the BDO, a quick thought on what we're watching now. To me, it seems like it's crumbling before our eyes. Ticket sales for the World Championships low right now. What do you make of what's happening to that legendary organization?
I look at what's happening there, and I just feel sad for the players. The players didn't ask for this. It's not their business to run the organization. When they get involved in these tournaments, they are doing so under the assumption that the management of the BDO will be taking care of things behind the scenes. And apparently they are not doing that. And for someone like Scott Mitchell or Wesley Harms or Jim Williams, who's looking for a first world championship title, it's really a shame for them to have to be thinking about, hold on a minute, is the BDO World Championship actually going to go on? And, of course, it would be a poor spectacle for that tournament to go on with almost no one in the O2. But just for the sake of the players who are counting on some of that prize money to come through, I sympathize with them totally. And it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. And I just hope things work out for the better for all those guys who are depending on it.
Yeah, you mentioned the O2. It's sad to see the World Championship leave the Lakeside. I hope darts finds a new home at the Lakeside in some way, shape, or form. From one legendary venue to another, the Alexandra Palace, stellar field. MVG's the favorite, of course, as we all know. But as we've seen in years past, anything can happen. If you had a crystal ball, Chris, right in front of you now, tell us what you see.
I think what we're going to see is more of the first round players beating the top 32 seeds than we've ever seen before.
Wow, drama.
Because I believe if you look at some of these regional tours that players are contesting, you're seeing really top flight players come out of these regional tours, even though they've never been to Barnsley or Wigan to play on the Pro Tour with some of the top PDC guys. Some of the stats that I've looked at have indicated that a player like Danny Baggish, for instance, of my very own US of A, is one of the top players when it comes to ton-plus checkouts in the world. I had him number 6 out of the 96-player field.
Really?
And you look at someone like Noel Malikdem of the Philippines. Similarly, he makes a number of other top 10 lists on things like hitting 171 through 180. I mean, one of those big 3 treble visits. Obviously, the progress in darts, in terms of form and top achievements, is continuing to move forward. But it's slowing down at the very top levels of the game. You're not seeing MVG hit as many, 110 plus averages. You're not really seeing him threaten his world record over the past 2 or 3 years. Obviously, he's still playing at a high level, but it's just not advancing as quickly as it had during those years from, say, 2013 to 2016. What we are seeing is a rapid development of talent in Asia, in Australia, in North America, and that makes for a much more interesting World Championship because all of these seeds who qualified automatically didn't have to play through a qualifying tournament or didn't have to grind it out on the Players' Championship circuit are now going to be faced with a really superb player that they've never heard of and that stands an excellent chance of catching them totally off guard.
Well, it's going to be amazing from top to bottom. It's a jam-packed roster of talent. MVG, I know you're a big fan. Do you think he wins it? Do you think it's going to be comfortable? What do you see?
I think I would be. It would be silly of me to bet against MVG,
right?
Because you look at all the tournaments he wins. You look at the fact that he is the only player in the world, for most of the past decade, who has won more than 80% of his matches. This guy knows how to win matches and win tournaments. It takes a really superior performance to catch him off guard, like the one that Rob Cross did 2 years ago, like the one that Raymond van Barneveld did in 2016. Obviously, Gerwyn Price is peaking at absolutely the right time, and to be honest, it may not even be a peak. He may continue to improve from here going forward. And I think the seeding has it right that Gerwyn Price is the most serious threat to MVG. And if they do meet in the World Championship final, it will be a tough ask for Gerwyn Price to match MVG, not just over 15, 20 legs like they have been before, but over potentially 13 sets, which could take you anywhere from, say, 45 to 70 legs. And that is a lot to ask out of anybody, MVG included.
I think that's the matchup everyone wants, and if it comes to fruition, man, oh man, I will be glued to my seat. Now, one guy I want to talk about, Glenn Durrant. What is the possibility that he unifies the belt? It'll be a tough task, but if there's anyone up for it, maybe he's the guy.
He certainly, that is probably the last chance, we will ever have of someone having a BDO and a PDC World Championship in the same year. No disrespect to anyone who's going to be playing at the BDO event later on, but I think it's pretty apparent that of the class of recent BDO players to have played darts recently, there's Glenn Durrant and there's everybody else.
Right.
Another interesting thing for him, it would be a great outcome and a really exciting outcome for darts to see the traditional rivalries of darts sort of consummated in the World Championship final, because he is in the lower half of the World Championship draw, and if he were to make it all the way to the final, he would potentially play MVG. And if that were to come to pass, you would have England versus the Netherlands, a BDO 3-time world champion versus a PDC 3-time world champion. That would just be a tremendous outcome, and it would draw in, I think, more viewers than any other final, except perhaps MVG versus Gerwyn Price. And let's be honest, Glenn Durrant has proved over this past year that he can not only win titles on the Pro Tour, but that he is potentially the favorite to reach every TV quarterfinal, possibly semifinal. He has everything he needs to get the job done, and he's done it before. He can do it again.
You're getting me excited, man. I'll tell you what, I cannot wait for this. Real quick, because we're over time, but let's run down your Twitter and see what it all means with respect to the Worlds. You tweeted out the 2019 win percentages for Darts Top 10. No one is close to matching the consistency of Mighty Mike.
And no one has been close since Phil Taylor was in his best years. It's just, I can think of no better illustration of how dominant MVG has been in darts than to look at the sort of mess of lines sort of connecting and interconnecting with each other between 60% win percentage, 70% win percentage, different players at the top of the pack every time, every year, and new players at the top every next year. And then you just have MVG sailing blithely above it and nothing really happening to challenge that.
You tweeted out the list of the most 10-dart legs in 2019. Peter Wright first, MVG second. There was 214 this year. Impressive. I mean, if it's not a 9, the 10 is the next best thing.
Yeah, and sometimes the 10-dart leg can be almost more exciting to watch because there are more ways you can do a 10-dart leg, and there are some pretty exciting and interesting combinations that people are more inclined to go for a 10-dart leg than they would for, say, a 9-dart leg. 9-dart leg, you're going to see a lot of 1-4-1 and 1-4-4 finishes. But in the past, you've seen MVG do a 10-dart around the bullseye. You've seen him do a 10-dart around double 1. You'll see players do fancy setup shots like treble 20, bullseye, treble 13 to go from 181 to 32. Of course, it's not a perfect leg, and you're often going to see a player miss a treble when they're going for, en route to a 10-dart leg. But it's still quite rare to see one on TV, and we're bound to see a 9-dart leg on TV, but we're bound to see probably, I would imagine, between 5 and 8 10-dart legs at the World Championships. So they're always fun to watch, and it's the next best thing. And if you can't have a 9-darter, I'm perfectly happy with a 10.
I smell a bet. There's a tip right there between 5 and 8 10-darters. You tweeted out that 10-darter against Kim Huybrechts, MVG going the bullseye with his 10th dart. But can you imagine a 10-darter on double 1?
Well, that's if your opponent is well behind in the leg, like was the case for the double 1 10-darter and the bullseye 10-darter, and you're MVG and you have all the confidence in the world, you figure, might as well put on a show for the fans.
Absolutely. Okay, another interesting stat. I think this is important for the Worlds. Players with the highest averages against MVG because he is the favorite. So who plays well against this guy? Keegan Brown does. So does Glenn Durrance. So does Gezi. So does Nathan Aspinall.
Yeah, they've all had fantastic results against MVG. Keegan Brown in their 2 Euro Tour matches they've played, it's Keegan Brown 2, MVG 0. So obviously it's highly unlikely that MVG and Keegan Brown would meet up in the World Championship final, which is the way the draw is situated. But full credit to him. That's a major step forward and something that most players, such as Dave Chisnall, Peter Wright, would have really struggled to do in the past. But I think the most impressive out of those stats is Gerwyn Price averaging 98 against MVG in their 2019 matches, because most of the other players who have an average that high have played him 2 or 3 times, and it's obviously impressive to get up to 100 average when you're doing that. But it's another level of difficulty entirely to do what Gerwyn Price had done, and that is to play him, I believe, 10 times this year, over 127 legs, and still get up to a 98 average. That is as good of a proof as you could have that Price has well and truly arrived and that he's ready to take on MVG. It's
the $1 million question. I mean, if you could bottle the answer, you'd be a millionaire. Why do some players step up against the best, and why do others wither? It's the interesting thing about darts. You see it all the time.
Yeah, and it's never been more apparent than when you see Glenn Durrant come onto the PDC Tour in his first year and take down MVG twice, while Dave Chisnall has gone something like 30 matches without a win against MVG. I don't know if it's just a mental block that a player like Dave is running into, but it's worth recognizing that sometimes MVG recognizes that a particular opponent poses a particular threat to him. And I think he sees that in Dave Chisnall, and that he's willing to up his game to leave out the possibility of a surprise upset from someone of his caliber, because he has it. He just hasn't been able to do it at the right time to take out MVG.
Right. Well, I can't wait. It starts Friday. It's going to be exciting. And if what you say comes true about the first round and these upsets, I mean, man, it will be so exciting. One match that I'm thinking about betting, okay? Now, I'm a big Gezi fan, and I hate to bet against him, but, Willie O'Connor, and that's a tough opener. Willie O'Connor, if he's the guy, this guy's elite, and if he finds the zone, he's dangerous.
He is, and there are so many first round matches that are you wouldn't be surprised to see them in the round of 16 or the quarterfinals. I mean, even think about Jose de Souza versus Damon Hanlon. Jose de Souza has would have had probably the best debut year as a tour card holder were it not for Glenn Durrant, and he's playing a guy who's already beaten the top players in a World Series event. I mean, any number of these first round matchups are just prone to be 5-set thrillers.
Very intriguing too, because whoever comes through that de Souza-Hayda match has Durrant, I believe.
That's true. That's Glenn Durrant, I think, has had the most difficult draw of any of the seeds. And not to mention that if Glenn Durrant wins his match, he's only the 27th seed, so he has to play Daryl Gurney, and he's in the same quarter of the draw with Gerwin Price. In the unlikely event that he does become the world champion, there will be just every possible doubt you could have about Glenn Durrant will have been dispelled at that point, because he's come through the most difficult section of the draw. He's beaten all the top players, and to hold both world titles at the same time would be an unreal achievement.
I appreciate your time. I want to leave with some comedy. You tweeted out a 2010 comment on a 2007 YouTube video of MVG's first televised perfect leg. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I'm as guilty as this sort of thing as anybody. You look at a short-term trend of a player, even if it's a year or so, and you say, I guess that's the end of his career. I'm guilty of that myself. This comment came at a time when MVG, right around 2010, was ranked between the 30s and the 40s in the world, was having trouble winning any tournaments on the floor or otherwise. And it's just a testament to sometimes players just need a couple of years of grinding through tough losses to get to a point where they learn how to win. And that has never been more true than with MVG.
Whatever happened to MVG? Whatever happened? He's the best in the world. Listen, I hope you enjoy the World Darts Championship. I know you will. It's an exciting time of year. Just enjoy it, relax, do what you do, and I hope for some drama. I hope for close matches, some upsets, and just some drama.
So do I. I've got a little bit of time off from my job around the World Championship and around Christmas, so I'm going to take it all in and have a great time.
Chris Kempf, statistical analyst for the PDC, a writer. He loves the darts, folks. We love him. Check him out on Twitter at Akapedia. Chris, thank you so much, man. You've got me all pumped up for this Christmas.
I'm glad. Thanks a lot, Derek.